I call the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Mr. Speaker, the sincerity of that last speech is evidenced by the fact that the man who gave it is just back from the latest round of the TPP, but he won't tell one New Zealander what we're negotiating about. It's an utter secret. Mr. Speaker, the fact is that it's very instructive that the Attorney-General led off for the government, substituting bombast for substance. And I say this because it's very apposite for our future. That minister who made that speech was put up for a certain reason, which as time unfolds, he and we and everybody in the country will understand. But that's for another day. The other thing is that the Prime Minister was so alarmed by his press statement at Al-Qaeda in New Zealand that he decided not to speak on the security bill which is in his name. He was so alarmed by this information, he decided not to make a speech today, but put the usual yes men up to give his address. We rise on behalf of New Zealand First to speak on the Government Communications Security Bureau and related legislation amendment bill. We recognise that the defence and security of our country is of the utmost priority, and we said so from day one. It's one of the fundamental pieces of a social contract between the state and its citizens, that the people's safety and defence from internal and external threats must be maintained. And that fundamental principle, we believe, should be shared across all political parties, whether it be in relation to foreign affairs, the police force, or a citizen's right to protest. Now, we'd like to be on the parliamentary record that New Zealand First was prepared to seriously deal with this legislation, provided a number of safeguards were included. Sadly, this government has not taken that approach, nor has it generally sought to work across the parliamentary divide. And the member from Hamilton can make those sorts of frowning statements over there, but I'll say something to him that he should not overlook. This is almost a sideshow to what has happened in New Zealand. And what's happened in New Zealand is that the Prime Minister is on record saying statements that are demonstrably not true. Now, for decades, the New Zealand people and our intelligence agencies have remained under the radar screen. They've been getting on with the job, protecting New Zealand's interests and remaining unseen by the general public. Mr. Banks, when he shouts, give us an example, Mr. Dunn said that too, and he is gone within a matter of days. We don't make idle threats here. I want to come back to say this. We had a status quo of agencies under the radar screen. The status quo was maintained under numerous governments, both Labor and National. There was no great controversy until along came John Key. In the past months, we've seen our security agencies go from being an insular beltway issue to being one of great controversy on which nearly every New Zealander now has a view. New Zealanders are now well acquainted with the background because of all this news and speculation about spies, lies and alibis. It's big news. And the architect around the GCSB controversy is the Prime Minister, the Minister in charge. Now, you know, coming primarily from a background of money speculation, we at least assumed that he might pay some attention to the detail, but he has not. Remember, this issue exploded with the illegal actions of the GCSB over the Kim.com affair. Now, there's no time to go into the facts about that. Safe to say this. The Prime Minister's denials of prior information about Kim.com, the Hollywood connection, the Washington Power elite, and because he just made a statement, the role of the Attorney-General. So I'll laugh now, but you won't be laughing later. That I do know. I want to tell that man there that forensic research is critical in our game. And there is the research that implicates him. Deeply implicates him. Now you're saying it now. Wait till the reply at the end. I know he led off, but if he wants to put it on the line today, get up and say it in the reply that in no way is he in any way involved in the Kim.com affair. Say it on the line in this House, on the record, so that if it is disproven, he has to go. That's my challenge. Oh, yes, you're right. If you look in the mirror and you say, what a nut, you're quite right. Because he's a nuts to put his whole career on the line in the way that he is inferred by his constant denials. Now, the nature of the GCSB engagement are, if you look at all those allegations and the Prime Minister's denials, they're all bound to fail. Now, Minister or Attorney General, no, it's not a fantasy. It's not a fantasy to know what the Attorney General's record is on this. Nobody's inquired into what he's done. No, look at your colleague. Don't look at the Minister of Police for some sort of haven, for some sort of refuge, because I have so often in my career seen denial after denial, only to see tears and desolation when it's over. And John Banks knows all about this. John Banks knows all about this. For goodness sake, he was hugged by a bear of a man, he couldn't remember him. He got on a helicopter, he couldn't remember that, even though he got a helicopter's licence and takes great pride in that. He went up to this great mansion, couldn't remember that. And there was a huge Guy Fawkes display paid for by this great big bear of a man, and he couldn't remember that. Then he got 42 separate donations, and he forgot not 1 or 5, that's possible, or 10, or 20. He forgot all 42. Unbelievable, 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 Mr. Banks. And that is why, sadly, the great career that most of his colleagues used to sponsor and help him through is now come to disaster. He's on his own. The Prime Minister's stance is to deny culpability and to argue that despite the Eagleson missives that he as Prime Minister is not responsible. How dramatically things have changed. This is what somebody said way back in 2007. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe you get the democracy you are prepared to stand up for. Here in New Zealand, we often take our democratic freedoms for granted. We think they always will be there. We have a Bill of Rights which is supposed to protect our right to freedom of expression. What on earth is going on?" And this minister, or this member of Parliament, went on to say this: "I have a different view. I believe what Thomas Jefferson said, that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. We cannot and we must not take democratic freedoms for granted. Because in reality, it is not a Bill of Rights that protects our rights. It is not up to a solicitor in the Crown Law Office or an official in the Ministry of Justice. In the end, it is not up to the government at all. The protection of rights lies with us, the citizens of New Zealand. There are times when we have to stand up for our rights and the rights of our neighbours and friends, and indeed the rights of people we totally disagree with, or else these rights will begin to erode away." Who said that? Why, John Key said that. Well, of course, detail is important. It wasn't Thomas Jefferson that made that statement, but John Philpott Curran, when he said, "The condition on which God hath given liberty to man is eternal vigilance." Facts are important. What Prime Minister and Attorney General has happened? Seeing the Attorney General has given all his political background and his majesty in the law, which he frequently, in grave vanity, extols around the circuit. What Attorney General has happened? Well, they've been selling off their ideals quicker than they've been selling off their assets. And as for Peter Dunn, well, he said this: "I think we start down a very slippery slope. And I, for one, having had a long interest in protecting personal privacy, am not prepared to take that step."
He fell down the slope.
That's what he said on the 11th of June. Who's overseeing the activities of the intelligence and security agencies, and are they independent with teeth? First question. Answer: no.
That's right.
What civil liberties are herein being eroded? Answer: too many. 3. With respect to metadata and new cyberspace technology, are there nevertheless in this bill fundamental principles that will see this law endure? No, there are none. In conclusion, New Zealand First believes in the security of this country, its defence and its well-being. And what we are opposed to is dangerous law changes and the sycophantic defence of them by people who should know better.
Exactly.
Like the Attorney General. The sycophantic defence of the indefensible by the Attorney General. This man appoints judges. Wow. This man has got enormous sway. And out there in the great land of the law, He has shamed himself. This is bad legislation. And in its present form, it should not pass.
I call the Honourable John Banks.
Speaker, we've just